Doctors here in Washington and across the country are seeing a rising number of people addicted to 7-OH. It's a synthetic form of kratom that can be used in 13 more powerful times than morphine. And joining us now is Owen Racer, public health reporter for Cascadia Daily News. Thanks for speaking with us, Owen.
Of course.
So you've been tracking this issue right here in Washington, where you can legally buy 7-OH in gas stations and smoke shops. First of all, what is the difference between kratom and 7-OH?
Kratom is the natural powder form of this plant from Southeast Asia, and it's been used here in the States for decades and abroad for even longer. And what I heard talking to people in Washington is that they've been using this product relatively safely for years, some people decades, and some people even longer. Mostly in the tea form or other, powder-derived forms. That has transitioned for some into more addictive substance use, tendencies, or to 7-OH in the last couple of years, which is the newer, more potent form, often in flashy bottles or capsules, and it's a condensed, more potent form of a very small compound of the traditional kratom plant. And so it's been, made synthetic, chemically altered to be more addictive, which is why doctors and clinicians across the state are having, much more issue with the new product rather than the original powder form of kratom.
Well, what are the medical and addiction professionals specifically seeing on the front lines of this potential drug crisis?
Unlike real opioids, traditional opioids that have been talked about for the last couple of years and decade, this isn't a product impacting folks experiencing homelessness or on the street. This is primarily impacting people who have the money to support an addiction to this product because it is expensive, anywhere from $5, $10, $20 to $150 per product. And so what I've been hearing is this is impacting families, people who are employed, people who are housed, and therefore it's impacting relationships and finances of families because it costs a lot to keep up an addiction to this product. And in addition to that, parents that I talk to are experiencing troubling addictions amongst their kids, and that has been seen in the clinics as well, where providers are seeing kids come in as young as 15 with addictions to these products.
Well, you just touched on it there. The demographics mentioned in your piece, specifically teenagers and working professionals. So I want to double back there. What have you heard from the users of 7-OH specifically? Anything else that's really telling here?
Well, what I've heard is, again, an important distinction between the traditional kratom product and then the more concerning 7-OH. One is people who are using kratom safely are quite concerned with potential regulation around the more potent 7-OH product. They're saying, hey, I've used this safely for a while. Don't let this new, more potent product take away the product I've used safely. Whereas people who have, are using 7-OH, they're rushing to stores, not just in Washington, across the country, to get the product and stock up on it before it is potentially federally regulated. And so this is kind of in a very uncertain period we're in right now, where legislation and regulation is unknown, but people still have developed, dependencies to these products. And so the potential for the use of that is in question.
So this issue has caught the attention of state lawmakers. What kind of action have we seen from Olympia, and what do you expect moving forward?
Well, Representative Joe Timmons tells me that next session, some of these bills may be brought back. Last session, there was 3 bills related to kratom and 7-OH, none of which passed. They would have done everything from tax the products to increase labeling requirements and age restrictions on these products. All of the bills, if passed, would have made it harder for people to obtain these products, but they stalled. And so the products are still, statewide available, although some cities like Spokane have, moved to ban it.
Owen Racer, thank you for your time and your reporting.
Thank you.